Hi, it's Debbie here, and today I have a faux watercolour background to share that uses new products from Sequins Stamp's Your Loved release. I'll leave a link in the description below this video to the coordinating blog post where I take a closer look at what's in the new release. For now, let's crack on with this card. The products I'll be using are the Damask background cling stamp, the Ornate Love Dies, and the Simple Sentiments 2 stamp set from Sequins Stamp and CZ Design. To get the faux watercolour look, I'm going to stamp the Damask background on watercolour card, and to get the best stamped impression, I'm using smooth hot pressed watercolour card from Arches. I placed a piece of card in the MISTI that was a little larger than I needed for the 6x6 stamp set, which I placed on top. With the stamp set in the MISTI, I pulled out 2 colours of distress oxide ink, spun sugar and abandoned coral. Colour is a key ingredient for me, and I love when my holiday crafting starts to come to a close and I can pull out fresh colour combinations for the new year. I fully covered the stamp with the spun sugar ink pad and then turned to abandoned coral. I dotted this around the background, being careful not to cover all the spun sugar. My aim is to have areas of highlights from the spun sugar and then lovely coral spots to bring in some depth. To get a little more sparkle trickling through areas of the background, I splattered the stamp with my favourite Perfect Pearls solution. Once I got a liberal splattering of the Perfect Pearls on the background, I spritzed the whole piece with water. This allows all the colours and sparkle from the Perfect Pearls to blend together and will soften any hard lines from when I applied the abandoned coral ink. I spritzed the background, getting on for 10 pumps I think, and then stamped the wet background onto the watercolour card. I pressed the stamp firmly onto the card and left it in place for a few moments to let the colour really soak into the card, and then lifted the door of the MISTI to reveal the beautiful background. The video really doesn't do this justice. In real life, it's so beautiful, with soft pink and coral with sparkly areas winding through the damask design. I dried the panel with a heat tool, and then to emphasise the sparkle some more, I liberally splattered the piece with more of the Perfect Pearl solution before drying again. I then cut the panel to be 5 1/4 by 4 inches, which is slightly smaller than an A2 card base. Nothing goes to waste in my craft room, and I'll certainly be using this pretty leftover on a project soon, and the excess watercolour card I trimmed away I'm now using to create a piece of card that perfectly matches the background colours by dragging the abandoned coral ink pad over the piece until it's fully coloured. I dried this with a heat tool, and the reason for this is that I'm going to die cut from this piece, and if the card isn't fully dry, the pieces will get stuck in the dies. The dies I had in mind were the large Love from the Ornate Love die set. I like the size of these letters, and their clean font I thought would be a great contrast to the elegant design of the damask background. Having trimmed the dies from the rest of the set, I laid them on the coral card and ran them through my die cutting machine. I added foam adhesive to the back of the faux watercolour panel and adhered it to an ivory card base. I found that this ivory card is a perfect match for the off-white of most watercolour cardstock. I added foam adhesive to the back of the love letters and used a T-square ruler to ensure I had them on straight. When adding letters like this, I find it easiest to add the first and the last letter in place, and then use the remaining gap to add the rest of the letters so that they are equally spaced. Initially I placed the letters gently, but once I was settled on the position, I pressed them down firmly. The new Simple Sentiments 2 set from Kathy Zilski and Sequins Stamp has a great array of sentiment options, and again I love the clean font, and the size of the sentiments work well for creating small banners that I love adding to my cards. I thought the Totally Love You greeting would work well with the die cut letters, and so lined up the sentiment on a piece of slate card in the MISTI. I treated the card with an anti-static powder bag to prevent embossing powder randomly sticking everywhere, and then stamped the greeting in clear embossing ink before sprinkling with white embossing powder and heat setting. I trimmed the piece to a skinny banner and added it over the top of the die cut letters with foam adhesive. Again, I'm using a T-square ruler to try and combat my lack of ability for adding things on straight. I'm in love with the large white and clear sequins in the Girl's Best Friend sequin pack, and added a few of those to the card with Gina Connect glue. However, I felt the embellishments needed a bit more depth, and so I took out an oldie but goodie die I've had for years and always turn to when I want a sprinkling of hearts or stars. This is the Holiday Shapes die, and I cut it from the leftover slate card I had from stamping the sentiment banner, and then added a couple of hearts with foam adhesive. And that completes this elegant faux watercolour background with large love die cuts and coordinating sentiment banner. I'll leave links in the YouTube description below to the products that I've used today, as well as a link to the coordinating blog post over at limedigitdesign.com, where you'll also find a look at the rest of the new You Are Loved release from Sequins Stamp. want to thank you for joining me today, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, I'd be delighted if you subscribe to this channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.